Hello. Let's talk about the delusion of the perceived reality. We already talked a bit about it in the previous exercises, but this one we're going to go a bit deeper. Do you realize that everything you look at, you don't see, you recognize? You never see anything. If you look around in the room that you're in, just look to the right of you and to the left of you. And now look back at the screen. You have had a very clear experience of what is in the room. But everything you looked at, you didn't see. You recognized it. And it's the same with all our senses. Whatever you hear, you don't really hear, you recognize. And it's the same with all your senses. The same with smelling, tasting, touching. You don't really experience it. You recognize. And it's a great idea from the evolution. It ensures our survival. You don't need to start from scratch every single day. You recognize what you surround yourself with. And experience is helping you out in making your life safe and ensuring your survival as long as possible. But from the awakened point of view and the non-dual point of view, it's not really helpful. Because everything you recognize, it comes with a mindset. It has an appendix of thought and identification attached to it. So if you look, for example, at a chair, you recognize that as a chair. You recognize where you got it from, how long you had it, if it's comfy to sit in, if you like it or don't like it. You recognize the color, the material. But all that is just recognition. And in that, there's a little bubble full of identification with every single thing. So if the chair breaks, if the fabric rips, if you get spots on it, if one of the legs on the chair breaks or it goes wobbly, it will evoke a lot of emotions and feelings about it. Regret, sadness, lots of things come up. And that can only happen because you identify with that chair. Now that's just a chair. Look around in your room again. Everything you look at, you have a little bubble of identification with. But the funny thing is that none of it, now when you're sitting and looking around in the room, none of it is actually seen. It's recognized. So I would like for you to grab a random thing in the room, and that is what we're going to use for an exercise. So I have a cone. And if you don't have anything in your room that you would like to do the exercise with, you can use the cone. If you're sitting and holding a thing, I would like for you to look at it. Twist and turn it. Feel how it feels. You probably see it's quite recognizable. It's quite predictable. Whatever you feel is what you assume that you would feel. Make a deep breath. And now I would like for you to really look. Hold the thing still. And really look. What do you see? Let your eyes explore. By now you have already discovered a lot of things that you didn't see previously. In your assumption of that thing, there was a very, very subtle identification with you knowing what it is. There's a grasping for that thing to be as it is. For example, a grasping for this cone to be a cone. There's a want for this to be predictable. And that is putting a little bit of a stick in the wheel when we're looking at things and wanting to become awake and wake up from the duality. The more you look at it, the more you see other details. You see other colorations. You see shadows that you didn't notice before. Even the shape change. You're now beginning to really see. Keep looking at it. And the longer you look at it, the more it changes. It is no longer predictable. And no matter what you're sitting with in your hand, it has now completely changed from what it previously was when you picked it up. The connection you feel with it is so much more intimate now when you're really, really seeing it. And that is why we don't do that regularly. That is why we just recognize. Because it puts us in a very intimate relationship with everything and with everyone. The thing you're sitting and holding, or the cone if you're looking at that, feels alive. Now you're really, really seeing. And it's almost like the thing is looking completely different than you remembered it did just a little while ago. It's almost like it becomes alive. The next thing I would like for you to become aware of is what we talked about in a previous exercise. You notice right now that you are sitting and looking. I would like for you to notice who it is that is looking. Look into that assumption of a looker, somebody who is looking. Where does that feel that it originates from? In your eyes? In your head? Is that anything but contractions? Is there anything else there than contractions? The muscles of the eyes. Is there anyone there looking? Or is looking just happening? And if, when you're sitting and looking at the thing, if the thing changes before your eyes, just like this cone, if you're sitting and looking at it, if it changes before your eyes, how can you even trust what you think you're seeing? Can you ever trust what you think you're seeing? If things change this easily just by looking at it? Of course you can't trust what you're seeing. The pathways in the brain that is interpreting what it is you're looking at are working so quickly, and they're updating all the time. And the more you sit and look at something, the more it changes. Now that changing is also connected with that very, very subtle grasping that we have. We want something to be something. We don't want it to be something else. So if you sit and look at the thing or look at the cone, you see how you still recognize it as a cone or as the thing you're looking at. Now, if you truly are non-dual, there's no memory of anything previously. Nothing has happened until this moment right now, which means how do you know? How do you know what this is? And if there's no one identifying with anything, then can you set whatever you're looking at, or this cone, can you set it free to look in whichever way it wants to look, and change shapes in whichever way it wants to shape? If you're no longer identifying with any thoughts of how this is supposed to be, so there's no wants tied into it, there's no don't wants tied into it, that means that this is no longer a cone that looks in a certain way. You're setting it free. The edges can be blurry. The color can change. The shape can dissolve. And so can everything. What you're sitting and holding in your hand, or this cone, can you set everything free? Can you let go of the identification of it having to be in a certain way? Since it is changing and morphing in front of you when you're sitting and looking at it, the edges dissolve, move, it becomes alive. And it's not at all what you started looking at. Can you let go of any assumption you have, any hooks you have into things being in a certain way? Can you just be with whatever is showing up in the moment, in whichever way it shows up in the moment? Where's the attachment for things to be in a certain way? Where's the identification for things to be in a certain way? Do you see how much is limiting? If the subject needs to be maintained and the object needs to be maintained as the subject is observing it, it goes against everything, all laws of nature, goes against impermanence, and it's so immensely deluded. Well then, take a deep breath. So what I would like for you to do in this week is to really, really look at things that you come across. What are you actually seeing? And what are you just recognizing? And it's not only about things, it's also about thoughts, other people, things that happen, buses delayed, traffic jam. Everything in your life is limited by limitation you have given it. Can you let go of that? Can you let go of that assumption that you know what is? If you no longer recognize anything, but allow anything to be alive and ever changing and moving, dissolving, what happens then? So spend this week with questioning everything, both what you think, you see, hear, smell, taste, and touch, but also what you assume things are. Really look closely, very, very closely. Slow down and really look. Thank you.